Susan. Ah, God. Oh, it's
you?
good to see someone I know.
Good to see you.
You look beautiful, as always.
What are you doing in New York City?
I'm here for an interview for a scholarship at Columbia.
Columbia? I thought that you were at the University of Texas becoming a great writer.
A great writer? I don't think so. Well, I am. But, but aren't you at Yale becoming a great artist?
Graduated Yale, but I'm at Columbia getting my master's degree.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, art history.
That's great. Yeah.
Listen, do you know anybody else in New York?
Just you.
Just me. Okay. Well, would you like to go to dinner?
And that's a clip from Nocturnal Animals. It's directed by Tom Ford. Tom, hello, sir. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm good. I would imagine, because it's been 7 years since A Single Man, that this must be quite a moment. Are you nervous when a new kind of baby is launched on the world like this?
Oh, of course you're nervous. And how it became 7 years, I have no idea.
It's a long
life
time.
literally just caught up with me. In my other life, I opened 100 stores, and more importantly, we had a son, and
Yes,
he's now
congratulations.
4 years old. Thank you. And I was very determined to spend quite a lot of time with him, and I'm still determined to spend quite a lot of time with him. But of course, however, it's a film that I'm very proud of, and luckily it has had good reaction, I would have to say. Very, very good reaction. And so that makes me feel good. I'm proud of it.
Explain how you came across the original story.
A friend of mine, a journalist who lives here in London, where I live part of the time and have lived here for about 18 years, told me about this book, Tony and Susan. And he said, my God, you've got to read this book. It's incredible. I picked it up, read it. I literally could not put it down. It's a fantastic book. However, it's a bit complex, and I thought, it's an inner monologue. The character Susan, we hear the entire book and story through her words and through her mind. I wasn't quite sure how I was going to make it into a film, but I've learned that when you find something that speaks to you, option it. So I did, and I had to really kind of spend a couple of years actually thinking about how am I going to take this book and make it cinematic. And I think the important thing, or at least for me, when you make a film, is to try to keep the spirit of the book. And what spoke to me about the book was that it is really a story about loyalty and people in your life and finding those people that are important to you and not letting them go. It's a cautionary tale about what can happen when you do let those people go.
It's a very cautionary tale.
Definitely cautionary.
So there is a complex structure which we'll talk about in just a second. You just explain what the story is.
Sure.
And maybe what it was that made you think, yes, I have to do this.
Well, the story in the book is different than the story that I'm going to tell you because I did make some changes in the film. So I'll tell you the story of the film. We start with a character called Susan. She is a very, very successful art dealer. She lives a very, very privileged life. Everything looks perfect on the surface, yet she's quite tortured. She's tortured by contemporary culture. She's tortured by her life. It has not turned out the way that she had hoped. She's in an unhappy marriage and arrives in her mailbox an unexpected manuscript written by her first husband, who she hasn't seen in 19 years. And she starts to read it, and it is a violent, violent story that she begins to understand is his way of expressing how he felt when she left him and how she left him in a brutal way. And then we start to have flashbacks of her life, and the three stories start to spin together, and ultimately we reach a conclusion, which I don't want to tell you what that is.
No, absolutely.
I don't want to spoil it for you.
So the complex structure. So on the one hand, we have Amy Adams playing Susan, who is at the heart of this film, and she is reading this manuscript. Then we see the dramatization of the story, and we have the flashbacks. How difficult was that to write the screenplay and then hold it all together? I mean, or is that what took you the 2 years that you were talking about?
No, really coming up with how to accentuate the key point of the book and how to, taking an inner monologue, unless you had a voiceover over the entire thing, would have been hard. So I had to create characters that aren't necessarily in the book and scenes that are not necessarily in the book to explain the story that in the book we understand through listening to this woman's thoughts. The three different stories were not so hard to put together. And the thing about them is I wrote them in scenes knowing that I could shift them around because they are complete freestanding scenes. So if the order of them didn't make sense once I got to the editing process, I could move them around. However, the way that I'd written it actually was the way that it ended up being, because the scenes just set well, but the stories to fuel each other. Because, of course, the man who's written this is making a comment about the woman who is reading it. And, of course, when he writes this, he's writing a certain autobiographical tale, and the stories really start to connect and fuel each other.
Sometimes in previous dramas where they try a reenactment, or that we see a dramatized version of a story which a character is reading, sometimes that bit doesn't, deliberately I suppose, doesn't feel as real as the main story. That's not true in this film. It feels as real, so that when we go to the book and the dramatized scenes from the book, that feels almost more real than the Amy Adams main story.
Well, thank you. That was important, because the inner novel has to be, what happens in the inner novel has to be visceral, because what this man is saying to her is, this is what you did to me. And the audience has to feel that. We have to feel the pain that the man who's written this book, Edward, played by Jake Gyllenhaal, feels. So it has to be visceral. It has to be, the entire film pivots around a particular scene that is key to the movie.
Can I ask you about Amy Adams? She's coming on the show in a couple of weeks' time to talk about Arrival. But apart from the fact that everyone loves Amy Adams and what a remarkable actress she is, in the main story, she doesn't do very much. And what you're asking her to do is to act so much with her face. So we're basically seeing her read. That's really, I mean, there are some flashbacks as well, but that's a remarkable performance that she does when we're just watching her face.
Which is one of the reasons I cast Amy Adams. I think she's a brilliant actress, but she also has, perhaps more than any other actress I can think of, the ability to telegraph her feelings through her face and through her eyes. And as you say, this woman spends a good deal of the film reading a book, but we have to understand what she's feeling while she's reading. The other thing about Amy is I wanted this character to be sympathetic. This is a woman who has everything in the world and yet is tortured and is really quite unhappy. It would be very easy to hate this character, but she is a victim of our culture. She's a victim of her upbringing, which we see also in the film, and she's a victim of her own insecurity, which has held her back in life. And I wanted her to be sympathetic, and there is something in Amy's eyes. You cannot not fall in love with Amy. You cannot not like her and care about her. She has a soulful quality in her eyes as a human and as an actress that, for me, was very important.
And presumably Tim Burton would agree, so which is why I put her in Big Eyes.
And which is one reason I cast Amy. I thought her performance in Big Eyes was great. And the moment I was watching Big Eyes, and I thought, this is it. This is Susan. I have to have Amy Adams.
When Colin first came on the show to talk about Single Man 7 years ago, we had a long conversation about his glasses, because Mark, who's the film critic on the show, loved his glasses. He has similar glasses. I see you're holding your glasses in your hand, and there is a moment in this movie where Amy Adams reads the script, I think, for the first time, and she takes out this enormous pair of glasses. And at that point I thought, okay, we're going to be discussing Amy Adams glasses for the next goodness knows how many months. Presumably you chose them.
Oh, of course I did, but they are not Tom Ford glasses.
Are they not? Okay.
No, in fact, there's not a single Tom Ford product in this film. You know, I separate those two worlds, and it's not meant to be a commercial for Tom Ford products.
No, but they're classy glasses.
They're beautiful glasses. They're Celine.
Of course.
Since I'm hyping a brand here, I might as well tell you what they are. They're beautiful glasses. They suited her face, and I thought also suited her character. You know, style. Every choice you make as a director in terms of costume set, every choice you make has to inform the audience about the character, about that person, and help support the story.
So given that you discovered this story pretty much, you optioned it, you wrote the screenplay, you produced, you directed, I'm imagining that you had a very clear idea about the casting. So not just the main characters, but fastidious attention to detail as we go, in quotes, lower down. You know, amazing performances. Michael Shannon, it's just terrific all the way through. Did you know about the casting? Did you have a clear idea who you wanted?
I did in the case of Amy, and I did in the case of Jake. The other characters, as I was casting the film, of course, I thought about a few different people, but I think you end up with who you're supposed to have. And Michael Shannon, I thought, was spectacular. He inhabited that role. In fact, he did not break. So in between takes, he would sit and smoke and smoke and smoke and smoke, and everyone on set was afraid to go anywhere near him. Aaron Taylor-Johnson, who I think gives one of the strongest performances in the film, is a friend, and I've been friends with Aaron's wife for 20 years. And I was a little hesitant about casting a very good friend in a film. I've always admired him as an actor, but in this particular case, I found him incredible. He inhabited that role and was so frightening and scary and unpredictable and professional and great on set. He was a terrific pleasure to work with.
One of the huge contrasts in the film is the art world of LA and then the sort of grimy Texas, where Jake Gyllenhaal, where we see most of his story. You're a Texas guy.
I was born in Texas, yes, and my family's been in Texas for a long time.
Did you ever come across characters like Aaron Taylor-Johnson, sort of low-life?
Oh, of course. I mean, I can't say they were my best friends, but absolutely, you know, I believe in that old line, write what you know. The book, for example, is set in the Northeast, which I know, but not nearly as well as Texas. And the book was written in 1993 before cell phones. So I needed to also find a place where there was no cell phone service so that we could have a story. And
cell phones have made stories quite difficult, haven't they?
Well, it's true, because you could, you know, literally you could lock all the doors today in your car and you could call for help and we wouldn't have had a film. So I had to find a place in the world where one might not have cell phone service, and that is still West Texas, and it's also a world that I know.
What is your favorite part of the process?
Oh my God, all of it. It is so much fun.
Because you're involved in so much of it.
Yeah, but the whole thing is fun. I have to say I love writing, because when you're writing, it is in a perfect form, because it's in your head. You've had no problems. Everything's gone exactly as you've imagined it. It's exactly the way you visualize it. The performances are exactly as you have thought. There are no problems. However, sometimes those things that happen that you don't expect are actually the things that add. There's a line in the film, Jake says to Amy's character, what makes you so perfect is that you don't think that you're perfect. And sometimes imperfection is the thing that makes things, gives things a life. So you never know. But when you're writing, it's all perfect in your head.
Tom Ford, thank you very much indeed for talking to us.
Thank you very much.